45 minutes or an hour on this Wednesday morning. Yeah, so the main focus of this course is to really look at behavioral health care. Obviously, kind of coming from the origins up to present day as to what some of the design principles are, some of the pitfalls of design and things like that. So we'll go through this slideshow. Like Jim said, anybody has any questions, feel free to stop and ask, and I'd like to make sure everything gets answered. So this first slide is just kind of a brief overview of just some different impacts of mental illness. Big thing that I take from all this is really the fact of, within the past even 10 years, it's gotten a lot more mainstream, which is a positive thing because there's stigmatism is not there anymore as to coming out saying, hey, I need help, I have a problem, people just being more vocal about it. Obviously, when all these different things happen in Hollywood and they're on the media, then it becomes more normalized. And that's what we're really looking to do in the approach for mental health care is more of a normalizing setting. You can see up here, 1 in 5 adults in the U.S. experiences mental illness. Maybe about a year ago, I was reading an article and they were interviewing college students, and from the subgroup that they had interviewed, close to 70% would experience some sort of mental illness during their time in college, whether that be, ADD, ADHD, the whole run of the gamut. But they all kind of fall under the umbrella of mental health. So the design considerations that we look at in mental health, first and foremost is going to be ligature resistance. If everybody's not familiar with ligature resistance, it's quite simply put anything that a patient can use to asphyxiate themselves. That can be, as you can see here in the drawing, there's different P-traps and grab bars and, shower chairs, even a floor drain. We'll get into that down the road, but even a floor drain can be used. Robustness is our real second consideration. And when we look at that, it's how strong is the product. When the product does fail, because eventually anything in the world, if there's a will, there's a way, how strong is it and what does it do when it fails? Normalization is kind of getting back to what I was talking about a moment ago of, everybody in their houses currently probably don't have combi units where they have a sink attached to their toilet. We don't have stainless steel toilets. So giving people the care that they need in a more normalized setting is going to set them up for success because they can mentally associate that now. On the flip side of things, if you go to the hospital and request, assistance and you're more or less locked up in what appears or feels to be a jail cell, now that's what you're going to mentally associate. Oh, when I go ask for help, this is where I'm put. Hygiene plays a critical role, and that's not only in behavioral health care, that's in healthcare, that's in every standard nowadays life, especially with coming out of this COVID. Patient control is another big one. What that really means is giving the patient some sort of control when they go into these facilities. They typically lose all control of time that they take a shower, time that they eat a snack or lunch and everything. So it goes a long way just giving a patient a control to decide whether they want warmer water or colder water when they wash their face or shower. And then accessibility kind of finishes and rounds it off of the design principles we're looking at. So like I was saying, a fixture consideration, ligature resistant, you can't tie, you can't bind anything to it. When we look at that sink right there, we try to put everything up against a wall on one side here. That reduces the risk of ligature points. I've worked closely with the Office of Mental Health out of New York State. They come out with a biannual guide as to their ligature resistance, and they're an independent third party. They've actually inspected a lot of my fixtures as well as others. It's pretty amazing when you see them walk out with a gallon-sized bag of, different shoelaces, dental floss, anything a nurse or a healthcare professional could drop into a facility or into a room when they're working, that is what they test them. So, I mean, they're tested down to a paper clip. Typically, they're looking at an average of about 10 pounds of pressure on the larynx, or the neck, to be able to form a ligature point. It can go anywhere down to 6 and go anywhere up to 15, but it seems like 10 pounds is about a good average. So there's two types of ligature points, I guess you would say. One would be looping, and the other would be wedging. Somewhat self-explanatory. The looping is going to be anything, say, around a wall-hung toilet. There's going to be a void underneath the toilet, and that a bed sheet could be looped around it and used to asphyxiate yourself. That can happen through even, say, a floor drain. When you look at a grid drain, you've got to understand a lot of the people that are in these facilities have nothing but time on their hands. So, you could actually take a paper clip and fish it down through the grid, fish it back up the other side, tie it off your string or whatever you fish through, and now you have a ligature point. Wedging really looks at, say, what's the distance between the toilet and the wall on the side, or an in-wall shelf. Can items be wedged in there that they create, enough of a barrier to now loop something around, say it be a shoelace or a string or something, and be able to use that as a ligature point. So these are just kind of some, this is a restroom that has been converted, obviously, from a previous kind of a standard restroom to more of a ligature resistance. The biggest things you're going to see there is really the one-piece sink down on the right. Anytime you use a drop-in, that caulking line right there is not only an infectious control thing, but that patient can actually gain access through that bead of caulking to be able to wedge something underneath there. You'll see the wall-hung toilet, which we just spoke about. Something can be looped around there, as well as the grab rail on the side. All the grab rails need to be enclosed, as you can see down in the bottom right. So when you look to the bottom right, everything has very soft, rounded corners. No risk of being able to loop something around. The toilet sits flush against the wall. So everything is a lot more secure. In these facilities, you're going to use tamper-proof screws. On a personal side note, I would suggest always using the Torx anti-vandal screws. There have been instances, I was actually at a facility where I'm sure you're familiar with the snake eye screws, where they have the two small holes in them. A patient had actually used the ears from the dog in Monopoly, and that actually became a perfect screwdriver to fit in the snake eye holes. So like I said, it's very, people are very industrious if they feel they want to be. Moving right into robustness. You can see here, this is obviously a vitreous china water closet. There are vitreous china water closets that are ligature resistant. However, this is unfortunately what you run into. When an item like this is shattered, it truly does shatter, and yet now you're going to have very sharp shards. Those shards can be used for self-harm. Those shards can be used to harm others, to take somebody hostage. I mean, you name it. We've all probably done a renovation job or two. I accidentally backed up into a bag of broken tile, and it cut my calf clear open. It wasn't hard to do. So, I mean, if you're using fixtures like this, you're kind of asking for, eventually something's going to happen. One of them are going to break, and I've noticed in a lot of facilities in general, once somebody sees one person do it, then that starts to become more of the normal, and it's like now that becomes a trend within the facility of, oh, well, you can clog that up. Oh, we should clog that up too. So it's always best to steer on the side of something a little bit more robust, if the job permits, obviously. So going into this, and I touched on the Office of Mental Health. So there's really no standard in the United States currently, or really anywhere for that matter, as to what is ligature resistant. You know, there's different terms thrown around: ligature resistant, anti-ligature. I would never say anything is ligature proof, because once again, when there's a will, there's a way. So like I said, the Office of Mental Health out of New York State has put together a pretty comprehensive guide. There are some other ones out there, Principles of Behavioral Health. I want to say there's the James Hunt Guide. So there are some that have definitely taken some fixtures and, you know, kind of done some third-party independent testing on them. So there's a lot of different things to look at and a lot of interpretation. The more information that everybody can get out on all the fixtures, the better. Because you know, there's a lot of things that, you know, maybe one person doesn't think about, and the other person, that's a huge priority and concern for them. But you look at cutting, jumping, weaponizing it. So weaponizing is going to be breaking that vitreous toilet. I've seen facilities with actually a standard style tank toilet where they had lids on them, residential style lids. Well, that lid becomes a weapon. So you know, different kind of things like that, going through testing fixtures, seeing what can withstand and what can't. With this, like I said, there's really no standard. So I feel like a lot of design has reverted just to prison fixtures, because obviously those are built to withstand probably some of the harshest environments in the world. So I think that's why we see so many of the stainless and combi units and, you know, prison fixtures in hospitals of this nature, because they've been tried and tested as to their robustness. So normalization is a big focus, and once again, like I said, that's creating fixtures that are going to have a same look and feel of as close to your home setting as possible. So that's that white, you know, typical fixtures are going to be a white toilet, a white sink, a white shower pan. You know, some of the higher polish, you know, shower fixtures, the faucet fixtures. I mean, that's very normal. That's what you'd see in your house, and that's what you'd see in a condo or a hotel or something. It can actually also decrease the what would be the word, the vandalism of the fixtures, because we've noticed that you treat people like animals, they're going to act like animals. You treat people and put them in a nicer setting, whether this be people, whether this be children. I see it. I've got 4 kids, and I see it with them. When the house is super clean, the kids tend to be a lot cleaner. If I let the house get a little messy, then they follow suit and they think it's okay. And unfortunately for me, they take it to the next level. But same type of philosophy in this healthcare design. So right here, you can kind of see normalization on the far left. That's going to be your combi unit, typically found in a prison setting. Not extremely normalized. I've personally never, I don't think I've ever used one. I've seen some, but you know, you go over to the center. That's going to be a stainless toilet with a powder-coated white seat. It gets a little more normal. I mean, I've used them in, you know, public park settings, you know, maybe some big sports arenas, things like that. We live in Phoenix, so we don't deal with it as much, but I couldn't imagine sitting on a steel toilet in the middle of a cold winter back in Ohio, Pennsylvania, anywhere where it gets cold. I'm sure it wouldn't be a pleasant experience. And then on the far right, you look, and it's became a lot more normal there. Looks more like a commercial restroom. The biggest concern on these would obviously be the grab rails here that you could loop something through, as well as that lid. The toilet seat is always a big debate when you're looking at behavioral health care. And reason being is, you know, there's a balancing act. It's always a give and take. You know, how do you design for patient comfortability, however, design for patient safety at the same time? So if you use very robust hinges on that seat, now it becomes a ligature point. If you use weaker kind of breakaway hinges, now that seat can become a weapon. So you're always going to find yourself in a give and take. Um, I personally err on the side of uh, having it be more secure and less risk for the patient rather than comfortability sometimes. You can see your standard grid drain down there in the center picture, and that's what I was talking about. So what the move is actually called is the crocodile roll. And where it originated was in Australia. The Aboriginals would actually, when they would be arrested, they would be put into a facility. Well, they've never been under solid roof, so they can always see the stars at night, the open sky. After about the first or second day, they would really start to lose it. Um, One of the things that they would do would take their shoelaces, tie it around the grid and the drain, tie it around their neck, and roll on the ground like a crocodile until that shoelace would asphyxiate them. Very similar to when we were all children, and I'm sure you've done it, is take a string and wrap it around the tip of your finger starts turning blue and purple. I mean, same principle, you're just using a bigger string and it's on your neck, not your finger. So it's one of the things we definitely look at. So this right here, this depiction kind of shows, a standard patient restroom. The restroom is obviously the one place within a facility where the patients will get any sort of privacy. So the restroom is typically where things, if anything, is going to happen. So we look at, the number one fixtures, the shower head. You can see a very, very streamlined design. It's a very soft edge, but not allowing anything to be able to loop around there with the way it's angled. The shower valve is going to be more of a joystick, kind of from like a video game design. So it's still ADA, however, you can't loop things around it, but even more importantly, it doesn't have a big handle to where a patient could collect some force and be able to maybe break the inside workings of that shower valve. The shower pan is a solid surface, and there's a ligature resistant drain in there. Nothing is ligature proof, it's ligature resistant, but what you're really looking at doing is trying to put in fixtures that maybe are going to buy the facility some time, right? Typically, there's going to be rounds that the nurses, doctors, whoever go on. The staff, goes and checks in periodically in the room. So maybe that patient comes in and something happened and it's just too much for them to deal with right then. Well, if you can get them through those first few minutes, most likely they're going to work through it and come out the other side and realize it wasn't as big as it was. So a lot of these fixtures are designed with that in mind. Get the staff some time. You can't make it as easy for the patients if they are trying to do something. So you're looking at that. And number 4, those are going to just be some towel hooks. Those are breakaway. So you hang it, I want to say, with 5 pounds or less, something right around 4 or 5 pounds. Those will actually pull out. The ligature resistant toilet roll holder. When you look at the water closet, this is a design for a facility that maybe already has cinder block walls where you don't want to go into tearing the walls. So this box behind the water closet is solid surface, but that will allow you to hide your flush valve and everything else. So you bring the services outside of the wall. With that being said, it's also designed for facility maintenance. That's another big part that we look at is it's great to put these into a facility, have them look nice and pretty, but how is the staff going to maintain these items? How easy is it for them? Every time the patient decides that they're tired of wearing pants and they want to flush them down the toilet, how long is that sweet down for? So the staff can be able to get them out of the drain. Is it, a couple hours? Is it a day? The anti-pit caulking that's used typically takes 24 to 48 hours to cure. So that's, these are all things to keep in mind. So you want to be able to have access to work on the fixtures as easy as possible. So on this slide, the hygiene, controlling bacteria, spread of infectious disease, I don't think it could be more prevalent than it is right now, especially with kind of getting through this pandemic. Um, it's always been a huge concern for us. How many seams are there on a fixture? Um, we've all probably seen it before going through a public restroom, or I see it at the airport all the time of, the caulking line has that pink kind of scum on it. I mean, that's not clean. There's probably bacteria growing there. So we don't want this in our health facilities where people are going to get health care. I mean, that's kind of going the opposite way. You're also looking at things, waterborne illness, bacteria, legionnaires, all the different things. Um, so we do have fixtures that do address those. I mean, purging valves, electronically managed stuff, being able to bypass a thermostatic mixing valve to do a hot water purge on a shower head instead of having to use harsh chemicals and things like that. But there's obviously a lot of spaces that are touched daily within a facility. So right here, it's, the sink should drain quickly. Water should have a little splash around. With the sinks, our biggest thing is looking at just how much the water splashes around and what sort of, caulking edges and places like that. Is the water faucet integrated and where it's one piece, or is there an additional faucet on top? Well, when there's an additional faucet, just like your home kitchen or something, you're eventually going to see buildup around that faucet. Or how well does the sink drain? Things like that. Looking at toilets, we're going to go back to that toilet seat. There's such a debate on it because I've seen other, water closets where they do more of a fixed seat. So the patient still has comfortability, however, they can't remove it and it becomes a weapon. Well, when you have a fixed seat, it's not seamless. So now you're taking something with a seam, using it in a situation like a toilet. How often does that seat get removed and sanitized and cleaned? I don't have that answer. I'm not a facilities maintenance, but I can't imagine it's done on a daily basis. Um, it'd be nice if it was, but I just don't think there's the man hours or the hands available to do that. So, like I said, it's always a give and take. So now you're looking at ligature resistance and hygiene and infectious control. Where do you want to give and take there? Flush valves, typically they're always going to be concealed flush valves here. So no top spud, we're usually looking at a rear spud flush valve, usually a sensor operation for more of a hands-free approach. However, there are, virtual push buttons, so like a piezo, as well as just a pneumatic push button, an air-powered that you can use as well. Shower pans, in the shower room itself, you're looking at more of using antimicrobial surfaces. Any grout line is a spot to be able to, have bacteria grow. Along that same principles, even with tile, there have been instances where a patient was able to pry a tile off or break a tile that's on the wall. Now that, once again, that becomes a weapon if that patient so chooses. So, looking at some of the things like that, quick disconnect shower heads, you remove the dead leg in essence. You remove the fixture completely, so that can actually be taken back and sanitized very easily, say in a nurse's station or, back in a facilities maintenance room, something like that. So looking at these are gonna, on top, all three of those are gonna be more of, like I said, more of a one-piece seamless design. So those are actually produced in a one-piece mold. So there's no seam, there's no caulking, nothing like that. The water is activated right there, as you can see, whether it be a push button on each side, a sensor that is gonna be underneath. Same with these water closets. Those are all going to be a one-piece seamless design. So these are solid surface. They weigh about 170 pounds, extremely robust. The one thing I always touch on with this is the fact that people always seem to like to carve their name in a toilet of someone they love. With something like a solid surface fixture, you can actually go in with sandpaper, remove that, clean it all up, and it looks good as new again. You're looking at a stainless or even a vitreous china, that's not going to be able to be possible. Here's that back box that I was speaking about, and you can see all the housing of the discharge pipes, the water inlet, control box and everything that goes along with it. So patient control, moving into that. I'll go back to the fact that patients want control of stuff. I was actually at a presentation in I'd say recently, but recently when we traveled about a year and a half ago, and I spoke with a nice young woman there that opened up to me and told me that she had to go to a facility for some postpartum. We talked about it, and she said the biggest thing for her was to be able to wake up in the morning and decide, do I want to wash my face with warm water or cold water this morning? So just giving somebody that little bit of freedom to choose can go a long way. I mean, we all take it for granted. We don't deal with it on a daily basis, but once again, somebody who has had, in essence, all their decision-making taken from them, something that simple can mean the world, and that assists in their therapy, that assists in how the nurses and staff can handle that patient, the level of care that they get, everything. So it's a lot bigger of a thing than most people would think. So the next and kind of the final piece of it is going to be looking at the consideration of ADA restrooms, how many there need to be ADA, also looking at what does it take to create more, say, what would it be, more uniform, restroom spaces to where they can be used for ADA. However, they're normalized enough that any patient can use them. So that's, adding on, say, the quick disconnect shower head that doesn't always need to be used. However, you have the capability. If that room needs to be ADA accessible, you can add the shower head on very quickly, and now you have an ADA room with the sink being ADA and the water closet as well. So it's just some small changes. Shower pans, you'd obviously have a roll-in shower pan, so you're not going to have that threshold. But just a few things to take a look at when you look at the ADA. So these are gonna go in further. So like I said, the handheld shower hoses. We personally use a quick disconnect that hooks in similarly like an air compressor. So you can remove that very quickly. Grab bars. Grab bars are a big one. They have to be closed on the underside of them. I will tell you, I've never realized how much engineering goes into an ADA ligature resistant grab bar. There's a certain, I want to say it's 1.25 inches size that you need, the X amount of space between the rail that you hold onto and the mounting plate on the back wall. All while keeping in mind it has to still be ligature resistant and have rounded edges and everything else. So there is a lot of focus on that. The shower controls are a big focus. Like I said, we'll go back to having a bigger handle and being able to have torque to break the inner workings of that shower valve. ADA compliant as well, whether that be used with an elbow, forearm, the palm of your hand. The faucets, I mean, most faucets are going to be ADA compliant. Anything typically with a sensor is going to be. So really at that point, you're just looking at what is your space underneath the sink with the skirt and the wall. Do you have the knee clearance, everything else? But definitely some points to focus on when you're looking at design. So this is just going to be another rendering, and this is going to be more of an accessibility thing. I mean, you can see there's plenty of knee space there underneath the sink. You've got the water closet and the grab rail here where you can transfer over, things like that. So, I mean, just to kind of recap everything, we didn't have a lot of questions. I know we went through this somewhat a little quicker, but they've got to be, all the restrooms have to be designed with safety in mind, first and foremost, going into the harsh environment that we're looking at. So That's ligature resistance, that's robustness, that's everything else. But right up there with that is also going to be the infectious control side of things. It is still a hospital. You are still providing healthcare. So we need to find a good balance between form and function, if you will. We want it to look nice. We want it to be soft. We want the patient to have a pleasant experience using it. We also want it to be a safe experience, both from being able to break the fixture, hurt yourself on the fixture, everything. So moving on further, inpatient facilities, that's a lot of what the focus is on these is going to be inpatient facilities. Outpatient facilities, typically you don't have overnight. So with a lot of outpatient facilities, you're not necessarily looking at the showering side of things as well as the complete privacy in the restroom. So it's really going to be the inpatient facilities is mainly the general focus. One thing I will touch base on is that I've noticed the trend is that at least every hospital will have, say, 1 to 2 suites down in the emergency room that are going to be ligature resistant. A reason being is not only just for mental health concerns. It's if you're bringing somebody in that might be intoxicated, under the influence of some sort of drugs. I mean, they can be out of their mind and they don't know what they're doing. They become what would be the word? They can hurt themselves without even knowing, basically. They might have no idea and not be in their right mind what they're doing. So Jim, that's about it for me. If there's any questions at all or anything, if you had anything, anybody else?
Well, thanks, Josh. Yeah, let's open it up for questions. If anyone has any questions, just feel free to unmute yourself or put it in the chat feature. No? Okay.
No, we're good.
Thanks again, Josh.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we're always available. Jim, you are as well. So if anybody does have any questions that come up, if they want any documentation on any of this, meaning if any of the fixtures or anything like that, we're happy to assist in any way we can.
Yeah, and if anyone wants a copy of the presentation, we can get that over to you. Just shoot me an email. This was also recorded, so if you want to share this with someone in your office or watch it later, it'll be posted on our YouTube channel in a couple days. But yeah, that's about it. So thanks, Josh. Great presentation. Yeah, hope you all can join us next time. Our next class is August 24th. It'll be covering utility controls with ISOMED. So thanks again, everybody. Thanks, Josh.
Yes, sir.
You all have a great day.
You too.
See you, man.